Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a very interesting and all around just really fascinating, terrifying, whatever you want to call it, upload to share with you. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, the best way that you can help this channel to continue to grow and go is simply subscribing and hitting that like button. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? Today's first encounter comes to us from Whiteside County, Illinois, the winter of 2018. Hello everyone, my name's JR, and years ago I was one of the biggest critics and thought that Bigfoot was a spoof. I'd grown up hunting and fishing in central Illinois. My father was a United States Marine Corps Vietnam vet. He taught me at a young age to hunt, track, and pay close attention to my surroundings. After high school, I joined the United States Marine Corps Infantry, where I served 2 tours. One tour was in Iraq in the Ali Anbar province, where I walked point. My job was to read the lay of the land and look for anything out of place that was not natural to the surrounding terrain. The second was counter-piracy operations on the coast of Africa in 2009. I'm 33 years old now, a police officer and a SWAT operator in the northwestern Illinois area. My first agency I worked for was right on Rock River, and 3 miles from town is Big Bend State Park, which is over 1,000 acres of wetland. On February 13, 2018, at around 11 p.m., I was given information about a stolen four-wheeler, which we recovered. During that time, I was given information about a snowmobile that had been stolen along the snowmobile trail, right on Rock River, between the town I worked for and the town a couple miles north of us. By the time I arrived on the river, it was well after midnight. Since the location of the possible stolen snowmobile was technically in county jurisdiction, I was assisted by 2 county deputies. It just so happens that one of the deputies, whom I'd been friends with for a long time, had a Bigfoot sighting of his own. This deputy and myself have worked together as police and SWAT for 3 years. By this time, we had a good working relationship where we would feed off of each other's movements and know when something was up, just by our demeanor. We knew where the stolen snowmobile was ditched, so we made a plan for one deputy to walk the snowmobile trail from the north. I'd go directly along the river, and my friend would come in from the south off of the snowmobile trail. We figured, given the location, that we would all converge on each other, and one of us may come across the snowmobile at one point. There was a lot of snow on the ground this time of year, and we knew we were in for a hike. As I walked along the river, I could see the river was frozen over, and I came to a tree line that ran east to west, and was used almost like a waterway for a field drain off into the river. As I approached the tree line, I heard a loud crash and running through the trees. My first instinct was that I kicked up some deer that had bedded down. The thing that stood out to me was the sound was like a herd of bulls crashing into the back of a stock trailer. The footfalls were very loud, like whatever it was had some weight on it. At this point, I thought nothing of it and continued walking. I walked around the tree line to where I stopped in the field to the west. I immediately found tracks that didn't make any sense to me. I should know better given my background, but I decided to walk into the tree line and investigate what I discovered. I was not prepared for... I found tracks that looked like human foot, but were about 15 inches long and were 3 sets. 2 large sets and 1 small set that were about 8 inches long. Like many times before overseas, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I could not put my finger on it, but I knew something was off. As I stared at the tracks trying to process what I was looking at, my buddy sounded off, wanted to know where I was, and there was a mild hint of concern in his voice. I said, "I'm in the tree line, I have something to show you." He responded, "I have something to show you too." As he entered the tree line, my friend whipped out his camera and began taking pictures. The footprints were distinct. You could see the heel and the ball of the foot, as well as toe imprints, and could tell from the tracks that they were running. Some of the tracks had drag marks on the toe portion and had some wisp marks from the hair, which made, of course, distinct marks in the snow. When I finally accepted what I was looking at, I knew that these things were Bigfoot tracks and had come from feet, from seeing them firsthand. Unfortunately, I didn't see them with my own eyes, I just heard them. By then, I had an adrenaline rush and wanted to keep following the tracks. My friend knew it was a bad idea and said, "We need to go back now." Looking back on it, he was 100% right. The tree line led straight to the river, and it was a perfect pinch point for an ambush. We backed out of the tree line and went out into the open field. There we discovered more tracks that were the same as the ones in the trees. But since it was a cornfield that was harvested the previous fall, we could determine that these tracks, which were in a straight line, had 5-foot span between the prints. We could measure it since the corn rows were on a 30-inch row when they were planted, which were able to put together that one of the Bigfoot went out of the tree line, which we believe was a scout ahead, to cross the field to the west and go to the other tree line, which would lead directly to the state park. The tracks went a little north, but stopped as if the Bigfoot observed the deputy coming from the north. The tracks then went south until they stopped facing the direction my buddy was coming from, the south. Then turned around and ran by me straight into the tree line. When the tracks went back to the tree line, we found the tracks from the other two. They appeared to be panicked, and we could tell they were running almost in circles. The little tracks would disappear, then reappear again. That would tell me the little one was being picked up and carried and put back down. At one spot where the tracks were going in circles and the little tracks appeared again, we found a little spot of urine. The tracks then went back east to the tree line and met up with the other set of tracks. We knew we needed to get out of there, so we took a few more photos and got out of there quickly using the bounding method. That way, both of our backs were not turned at the same time. The other deputy that came from the north, who we told about the tracks and saw a couple of them himself, thought we were full of it, but he was sure in a hurry to get out of there and get back north to his squad car. Later that night, I was still in disbelief as we went back to my police department. My buddy asked me, in all the years of farming and hunting, "Have you ever come across anything like that didn't make sense?" I told him a few years ago, right around the same time of year before I was a cop, I was checking cattle on the same river about 4 miles east of where we were that night. I was on a four-wheeler, ground was frozen, but there was no snow. I was checking the cows in a 400-acre field the river wraps around. I found a cow lying in the middle of the field. When I got close to it, I realized it was dead. I know from growing up on the farm that coyotes eat from the back end and tear everything off the bone. The hide of this cow had not even been touched, and it was not ate on at all. At first, I thought it must have been sick and died that night. When I walked to the head of this cow, I noticed that the chest was ripped open. Everything inside the cow was gone. It was an empty cavity. I found it odd, but not even thinking, figured it was coyotes. I remember dragging the cow off to be disposed of, and it was froze and stiff, but the head was flopping around. I realized the neck was broken, but then again thought nothing of it. When I got off of duty that night, I was not able to sleep, and I remember shots of adrenaline running through my body. Since then, I have been a believer, and I know that Bigfoot exists. My fiance and I recently purchased 53 acres of timber property right next to a state park just southwest of where those tracks were found. I've heard stories that there have been sightings on this road in the past few years. So in tradition, we named our property Squatch Valley Farm. And we are not ashamed to admit that we know they exist. Having said that, I purchased for my fiance and myself 2 Marlin 4570s just in case. Since that night the tracks were found, my buddy and I have both switched police departments. We work for the same agency now, and as luck would have it, we're on the same shift. Today's second encounter comes to us from Ashland County, Ohio, fall of 2020. This was taken from the official MWCD Muskegum Watershed Conservancy District Park Ranger Incident Call Report, CL 21010216. Field notes filed on August 18, 2020, at around 22:50 hours on Pleasant Hill Lake Park Ranger, McLean. August 18, 2020, 22:50 hours. Ashland County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call for unknown subjects throwing items at them from the woods at a primitive camp area located at Pleasant Hill Lake Park in Ashland County, Ohio. Park Ranger McLean was dispatched and arrived shortly on the scene at campsite 417 and met with the caller, Faith Steele, and her family, husband and 2 kids. The witnesses advised that someone in the woods behind their campsite was throwing sticks or rocks at them and around their tent. Due to it being dark, the witnesses could not see who was throwing the things at them. The husband went on to say he first thought it may have been kids messing around in the woods, but when he yelled into the woods, he did not hear any voices or noises indicating children. So he did not believe it was kids. The witnesses said a few moments later they heard a strange, loud or weird noises coming from the woods, at which time he made his young children go into the tent while he stood outside of the tent with his small pocket knife out just in case. The witnesses went on to say for a few moments later they heard a loud bang or a knock as if someone had smacked or punched the hard side of a wooden outhouse restroom located nearby the other side of the primitive camp. When they turned and looked in the direction, they observed something running into the woods. The witnesses described what they saw as tall, dark, and a hairy figure disappearing into the woods. The witness said the first thing he thought when he saw it was Sasquatch. Park Ranger McLean checked the area and was unable to locate anyone in the wooded area and did not observe any damage to the outhouse structure. These witnesses were the only people camping in the area of Pleasant Hill Lake Park at the time. No further investigation was warranted at the time. Today's next part of the video is a video from a subscriber from Louisiana who had been sitting in their backyard. What he heard, he decided to record. Beyond that tree line is nothing but swamp. Where he lives, there is no farmland. I've shared this video once before. People were like, that's a cow. This is not a cow. This subscriber has assured me that there is no farms where he lives. I Google mapped his location and sat at it, and there is no farms near his location. Just a whole bunch of swamp. Whatever that is, he believes to be a rougarou or a dogman, as we call them. It is terrifying. He was very, very afraid sitting in his backyard that day. And like I said, I Google satellited his area. There are no farms in that area, and that does not sound like a cow. I grew up on a farm and had a huge pasture of cows behind and a side of my house, and never heard a cow sound like that. Maybe a little similar, but definitely not like that. Now, the next vocalization that you are going to hear is from a subscriber who sent this in from Georgia. They were sitting outside, I believe, by a bonfire, listening to cryptid and Dogman encounters. Heard these crazy vocalizations and decided to record them. To me, this does not sound like anything that should be in the United States. It sounds like an unknown kind of creature. When I had my encounter, the noises these things were making were so bizarre and strange. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. And just listening to it again, I got chills because I have no idea what that is. Alls I know is that does not sound like it belongs in the United States. It almost sounds like it's in the jungles of like South America or Africa. It's terrifying. Can you imagine sitting by your bonfire with your friends and family, then all of a sudden the woods go dead silent, and then you hear that? No, thank you. All right, guys, and today's final part of the upload. The other day I had a subscriber from North Carolina, Jody, come on, and we had a really, really amazing interview. Probably one of my longest. Yeah, it is the longest interview I'd ever had. He just contacted me to let me know that he and his brother are going to be able to do the interview on Saturday. So that video will drop on Sunday morning. But his brother is the subscriber that had emailed me 2 years ago with an encounter, asking me, saying, I just want to share this with you. Don't share this with anyone until the time is right. And I had sat on it for a good 2 to 3 years. So I am super excited about having Jody and his brother on. And real quick, this is a quick encounter that Jody just shared with me. It's a strange one. It's one that I've heard dogmen look like chows and have that mane, but the description that he's about to give us is completely different from anything I had ever heard. I've heard of an albino dogman, but not a blonde dogman. So check this out.
And I cracked up a little bit smoking, and we had some pallets, some plastic pallets right below my window, and I started hearing them move. They was like being drugged, and then it's like it was being lifted. Well, I thought somebody was doing it. And I reached over and got my light, and I had my pistol right there with me, and I raised my window on up, and I shined my light. There was a blonde dogman. There's nothing else. It was on two legs, and it was moving the pallets to right under my window.
Like trying to get into your window, like stacking them up so it could get in or whatever? Because you're on the second floor, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm probably 15 foot up.
Wow.
And this thing, it went down to on all fours and started going away from me. Now, and me being a big dummy, I hollered, hey. I did, and I hollered again, hey, and it turned around and looked at me like, F you, and it turned around and just went on like it wasn't nothing, but, it knows I would have shot it, I guess, if it would have tried to get on up here. And when I went down there, you could see, the next day, you could see where they had been drugged and stacked on top of each other. And I would say this thing was probably 6 foot tall. If it would have got on top of them, it probably could have reached its hands or paws or whatever up and grabbed my window and pulled itself up.
Right.
But it would have got a face full of 40 caliber.
So do you think it was an albino one, or do you think it was just like a blonde colored?
I think it was a blonde colored.
Okay.
Now, I went around to everybody. See, I hadn't seen a chow dog in many years. And I went around to everybody's house, all the neighbors. None of them didn't know anybody that had a blonde chow, or even a chow.
So that's what its face looked like a chow?
Yeah.
Damn.
And its body, it had a big mane on it.
Right.
Up here at the head of it had a big mane.
Okay.
And there was a rotten smell in the air that just, like a dead smell. And I come home and start to walk up my steps, and I smell that smell like something dead. And everything's deathly quiet, and I'll stop and I'll look around, but I've got my gun on me, and I just stop and listen and look. And nothing's ever come out on me, but they have been red eyes seen here by my sister. And that happened with the door handle being turned on my mom, and my sister just happened to close to lock the deadbolt.
Right. So,
and
not to
now I'm going to tell you something else.
After like you looked down at it and yelled, what did it do? Did it just take off running?
Yeah, but not running. It was just kind of trotting.
Really?
Like it didn't have a care about me at all. Like, you're not going to do nothing to me.
Right. On 2 legs or 4?
On 4.
Okay.
Whenever it was standing right here, it was on 2 legs and looked up at me, and then it went down on all 4.
That's cool. I mean,
yeah, but
it's something you don't hear.
Weird.
You don't hear anything about, like a blonde kind of chow-looking dog man.
I know, and that's why I said that I wouldn't believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. And see, this is something else too. About 3 or 4 days later, on a Sunday afternoon, there was a guy. He ended up, for some reason, he went off the road, or he was coming down the road, and then he went in the other lane, went off the road, almost hit our apple tree, and then he hit a bank and shot straight up in the air and clipped a tree about 10, 15 foot up and broke it, and it fell on top of his. He had a BMW car, and it fell on top of it. But he was all right, and, you know, I was the first one to him. And I asked him, I said, brother, I said, are you all right? You know, and he said, yeah. He said, I'm just shook up. And he looked at me, he said, what the hell was that? And I said, what do you mean, what the hell was that? He said, was that your dog? I said, what dog? I said, my dog, I ain't got no dog over here. He said, there was a blonde chow sitting up there. He said, it looked like it was standing up. I said, what do you mean standing up? He said, on two legs. And I just like, oh, shit. Now, it was kind of rainy, and it run him off the road. But it's gone. And I'll tell you this, when he told the state troopers that happened, that's what run him out of the road, they automatically put him in handcuffs, put him in the back of the car, and took off with him, and would not let him talk to nobody else.
Really?
And when I was coming back, you know, I was going back over. I went to get him a drink of water because he wanted to drink water, and by the time I got back over, they had him in handcuffs. And I said, you know, man, I've seen that dog around, and they ignored me. They completely ignored me. And the neighbor over here, Jeff, he told me what he told him, and they put him in handcuffs and took off with him. Wouldn't let him talk to nobody. So I don't know if they thought he was crazy or what, or they
wanted to shut him up.
Yeah, exactly. And that was something that just, it confirmed that I wasn't as crazy as I thought I was.
Right.
You know, that it was real, that was, because he said it was standing up. And I'm like, dang, man, what, you know, why does this keep happening to me? Why is it always me? But I don't know if it's, I just don't know. It just blows my mind.
You know, one thing that Donald Coleman Jr., from the Tennessee region up by Lake Pickwick, he's had numerous encounters too, and he thinks that it's something to do with his DNA.
Yeah, or blood type.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah. Oh man, that. But that right there was another freakish encounter that I'm like, what? You know, I'd never heard nothing like that. And like I said, if I hadn't have seen it with my own two eyes, I wouldn't have believed it.
All right. And that is just a preview of what Jody and his brother are going to be talking about on Sunday. I know a lot of you had watched the first interview, and his family, where they live in the Great Smokies, have had numerous encounters. Not just Dogman, but Dogman, Sasquatch, paranormal. And it's a creepy area where he lives. I'm looking forward to having both of those guys on. Like I said, I've been waiting to have his brother. I've been waiting just to chat with his brother. This is going to be a good time. Wow. Yeah. So anyway, like I said, it was a different kind of upload. You got some pretty creepy law enforcement encounters in the beginning, some vocalizations, and then Jody to end the night with. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Kind of like a mismatch of everything, you know. And may the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life. Until later on tonight, my friends.